everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube, as well as on Facebook, Twitch, and on X. I am Bryson Carver. Great to be with you on a jam-packed Friday, NBA playoffs start to finish. Although, I will say that's a little bit of a lie. The finish isn't necessarily going to be, it's NBA, it's not NBA playoffs. Something that Draymond Green said, my man, I love me some Draymond Green, regarding Steve Kerr, and a little bit of an update on the Steve Kerr situation in Golden State. It looks like it might be potentially trending in the direction of my guy coming back. I'm hoping so. We'll get to that later in today's episode. But again, start to finish loaded show. We're going to get to Nikola Jokic, why I think he is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, lost his title as the best player in the world, and why I think a lot of folks, a lot of pro-Jokic folks out there are going to have to walk back a lot of their comments after this brutal loss in round one to Minnesota Timberwolves. Get to that. The New York Knicks. I mean, have we ever seen an annihilation quite like what they did last night to the Atlanta Hawks? Unreal. When you watch the game, if you were just kind of following it on your phone, like unbelievable stuff. We'll get to them. I think why they are the clear-cut favorite to win the Eastern Conference. They could play the Boston Celtics, or they may not in round two. Boston's against the ropes. They're playing game 7 against Philadelphia. Could they blow a 3-1 lead? Get to that and why I don't think you can trust them in the playoffs. Also discuss, speaking of blowing big playoff leads, could the Lakers blow a 3-0 lead? Is it possible? Could Houston do this? Could they really do this? Well, they got to win game 6 tonight to force a game 7 on Sunday. Get to that. And again, as I mentioned about Draymond, get to what he said about Steve Kerr and an update on Steve Kerr's status, potentially coming back to the Golden State Warriors at the end of today's show. But first, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that in the last, call it quarter century, we've seen some bad first-round playoff exits. Most of them involving 1 versus 8 seeds. Who can forget the We Believe Warriors taking out the Dallas Mavericks back in 2007? I remember just a few years ago, the Miami Heat took out the Milwaukee Bucks in 5 games. Gentlemen swept the 1-seed Bucks in round 1. We've seen some bad first-round exits. This is up there with them, with the Denver Nuggets losing to the Minnesota Timberwolves in 6 games. And we're going to give Minnesota nothing but credit in about 10 minutes. But on the Denver side, we got to focus on one individual only. Because a lot of folks who are pro-Nikola Jokic are trying to say, well, Jamal Murray was bad. Gosh darn right he was bad. He was awful. If Jamal Murray is included in trade rumors this summer, wouldn't be shocked whatsoever. Best regular season of his career. We've heard about playoff Jamal, like he's the equivalent of playoff Jimmy or playoff Rondo. Far from it. He was terrible in this series. You can blame the fact that Aaron Gordon was out with injury. None of that should have mattered in this series because Nikola Jokic played well below his standard. And I think it's time to, by no means like, undercut his legacy or his resume, but to re-examine it to a certain degree. So let's show first, this is why the numbers can be at times be a little deceiving. Show Nikola Jokic's numbers in game 6 against the T-Wolves. He was, 1 rebound shy of a triple-double. It's what he does, right? 28, 9, and 10, 11 of 19 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3. He was terrible from 3 in this series. 5 of 6 from the free throw line. So Nikola Jokic, in a vacuum, pretty good last night. But over the course of the series, particularly in games 2 through 4, Rudy Gobert shut him down, held him to 34% shooting, no show. And I think you have to look at what folks were saying about this man coming into the series, coming into the playoffs, really all regular season long. Not only, hey, give him consideration for league MVP, which, by the way, he would have gotten my vote for second place behind Shea. It was close between he and Wemby, but I'm like, God, what Jokic is doing. The Nuggets finished the year on a 12-game winning streak. They had a legit chance, it felt like, to win the West and go back to the finals for the first time 3 years. Jokic is in that discussion to be MVP. But as the old cliche goes, the old saying goes, heavy is the head that wears the crown, especially when that crown is the unofficial title, but we put a lot of weight on it, of best player in the world. When you look at the fact, Nikola Jokic is an NBA champion, NBA Finals MVP, 3-time regular season MVP, no one can take that away from him. But it's fair. Nikola Jokic, been going to the playoffs since 2019. So every year since 2019 he's made it. So this is what, his 8th straight year in the postseason. He's never beaten, not one time, a 50-win team in the playoffs. It's never happened. Famously, folks talk about how their run to the finals in 2023, they beat an 8 seed, a 4 seed, a 7 seed, and an 8 seed to win the championship. Now, I don't think we should look at that just based on seeing, because I think those teams, with the exception of Phoenix and Minnesota in the first round, because Minnesota was beat up 3 years ago, they played some good teams. Lakers were solid, and Miami beat two good teams to get to the finals. Point of all that is this. You had folks literally saying, go back and check this. There are credited and credible people in the basketball media. He's the greatest center of all time. He's the greatest offensive player of all time. Heck, Stan Van Gundy, and I got nothing but respect for Stan Van Gundy. Good coach and has done a really good job in broadcasting. Stan Van Gundy last week said, and I quote, Nikola Jokic is the best player of all time. Those are Stan Van Gundy's words. This is a former NBA coach in the media, well-respected voice. Greatest offensive player ever, greatest center ever. Some very small group of people that say, hey, you look at the numbers, look at the impact, look at the analytics. He's greater than Jordan and Bron and Kareem and Kobe. And name the guys. He's better than all of them. Such claims are absurd on their face. And again, I think Jokic is Jokic is already an all-time legend. That goes without saying. And I think worst case scenario, he probably comes out of the playoffs because I had him as the best player in the world. Actually, you can go and show the graphic about what my top 10 players in the world were coming in the playoffs. There he is at number 1 in front of Shea and Wemby. My guess is by the time the playoffs are over, in whatever order we'll see, Shea and Wemby will be above him by mid to late June. By the time the finals are over, because I think one of those guys are going to win the championship. I think it's going to be Wemby, but we'll see. Worst case, Jokic will be the third best player in the world, and he can reclaim the title as the best next season. He's only 31. But the flip side of that coin is, okay, he's 31. Most of the time, with few exceptions, one of which we'll actually show on this list, most of your accomplishments in the NBA come by the time you're 31. Not all of them. Most of the time your accomplishments come by the time you get to that age. Like, that's right kind of in the heart of your prime. For some guys at the end of their prime, depending on eras. Let's show Jokic's resume to this point. So he's 31 years old. This is what we've got. Pretty fantastic, right? NBA champion, 3-time MVP, finals MVP, 8-time All-Star, 6-time, we assume he's going to make it this year. He's going to, and should, by the way. 6-time first-team All-NBA, 8-time All-NBA. He's made 2 conference finals, 1 NBA finals. Now, it should be noted before we get to some other legendary centers that we're kind of putting him in these discussions with. It is really, really hard to make the case, best player in the world, if since 2021, you've been to 1 conference finals and 1 NBA finals. It's kind of the case that I've made. Wait, how in God's name is Josh Allen above Patrick Mahomes? Forget the resumes. Josh Allen has been to 2 AFC championship games and lost both. Mahomes been to 5 Super Bowls. Like, this isn't close. Love Josh. It's not close. It's hard to make the case for Jokic when it's, okay, wait a second. Since you won that championship in 2023, when you're defending your title in 2024, you play these same Minnesota Timberwolves. You got a 3-2 lead. You get the doors blown off you in Game 6. No harm, no foul. Fine. We got a Game 7 at home. And you blow a 20-point lead in Game 7. Like, you were the best player on the team that blew a 20-point lead in a Game 7 at home. That happened. The following year, never forget, he had a 3-game stretch against Oklahoma City. As supposedly the best player in that series, right? He's supposed to be better than Shea. Shooting under 40%. And in Game 7, they got mopped off the floor. And OKC was the best team in the league last season. That's unacceptable. If you are the best player in the world. And in this series, with a Minnesota team, no Ant Edwards, no Dante DiVincenzo, no Ayo Dosunmu. This kid dropped 43 points in Game 4. All of those guys out. Couldn't get the job done in a game you were favored to win on the road. So with that being said, greatest center of all time. This is where I get really, really irritated, and because it puts folks like myself in a spot where you got to say, okay, yes, Jokic is already a legend. But then you look like a hater by saying, yeah, I don't think he's greater than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who I think is indisputably the greatest center ever. Let's look at the guys I have above Jokic. We showed you Jokic's resume. Here's a guy you could make a case, make a compelling case. He ranks above all time. Moses Malone, one of the most underrated players of all time as far as I'm concerned. Moses Malone won an NBA championship, has 3 NBA MVPs, and has a finals MVP, just like Jokic, literally identical. Has 1 more All-Star appearance, has 2 fewer first-team All-NBAs, 1 fewer All-NBA, been to double the conference finals, been to double the NBA finals. So it's close. Moses kind of ekes him out on most of the categories that aren't a tie. So it's close. Jokic, Moses, you can make a case for either one. From here on out, the next 5 centers, indisputably, no arguments whatsoever, are above Nikola Jokic. And these are, I want to make this clear, these are their accomplishments by the age of 31, not their full career accomplishments. Put up Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem Olajuwon, a championship, and this is by age 31. A championship, he'd win another. A finals MVP, an NBA MVP, 9-time All-Star, 5-time first-team All-NBA, 8-time All-NBA, 2 conference finals, 2 NBA finals appearances. And keep in mind, by the way, in that stretch, you say, well, Jokic beats him in a lot of those categories. Hakeem Olajuwon, in the modern NBA era, so like post-merger, is the greatest defensive player of all time. Greatest defensive player ever is probably Bill Russell. In the modern era, in the color television era, that's your guy. That's the greatest defensive player of all time, Hakeem Olajuwon. Jokic, on the other hand, is no one's asking him to be Hakeem on that end. Could you at least try? I get on Luka about this all the time. Could you at least try on that end of the floor? No, he doesn't do it. There's Hakeem. It gets better. The 4th greatest center of all time, as far as I'm concerned, and this could sound like blasphemy among some people. That's fine. We'll go over the guys I have above him. Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain, by age 31, had won an NBA championship, just like Jokic. 3 NBA MVPs, just like Jokic. No finals MVPs, but again, the award didn't exist back then. 1969 was the first year that they awarded a finals MVP. Wilt Chamberlain was 31 in 1967. 6-time first-team All-NBA, 8-time All-NBA selection, 8 All-NBA selections, 6 conference finals appearances, which is triple Jokic, 2 NBA finals appearances. And keep in mind, for a majority of his career up until age 31, he was in the same conference with Bill Russell, who I think is the 3rd greatest center of all time. Put up Bill Russell's accomplishments. Again, this is just, it's almost silly. 8-time NBA champion, 5-time league MVP, no finals MVPs, but again, the war didn't exist back then. 8-time All-Star, only 3-time first-team All-NBA, but you got to realize this is at the time when it's been this way up until a few years ago, to where the best player based on position is how they ranked All-NBA. So they did the best point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. They wouldn't just do the 5 best players regardless of position. So that's why it is what it is. 8-time All-NBA, again, 9 conference finals appearances, 9 NBA finals appearances. He made the finals every single year, the first 9 years of his career up until age 31, which is where Jokic is at, which is why we're doing this comparison. And again, some of that is those teams were just stacked with Hall of Famers, but Bill Russell was the best player on those teams. The 2nd greatest center of all time, and a guy, to me, the 2nd greatest center of all time, and a guy who folks have said, Jokic is better than this player. He can do more, like he's a better passer than this guy, and Jokic is the greatest passing big man ever. He can do more things than this player. I'm talking about the big diesel, Shaquille O'Neal. By 2003, here was Shaq's resume. He was a 3-time champion, 1-time league MVP, 3-time finals MVP, a 10-time All-Star by age 31, 5-time first-team All-NBA, 10-time All-NBA. He went to 6 conference finals, triple what Jokic has made at this point in his career. 4 NBA finals appearances. Of course, we know he won 3 of those. It was a three-peat. The last time anybody has three-peated, the 2000 through the 2002 Los Angeles Lakers. Shaquille O'Neal in his prime. Go back and look at those finals. We don't have time to get into it today. Go back and look what Shaq was doing in those finals. Just pure, utter domination in every sense of the word. Jokic has been dominant. Not like that. Not like that. And the greatest center of all time, and I don't know why we even argue it, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. This is what Kareem did. And Kareem, by the way, a lot of his accomplishments came after 31. This is what he did by the time he was 31. Show Kareem. 1-time champion, 5-time league MVP, finals MVP back in 71, 8-time All-Star, 6-time first-team All-NBA, 8-time All-NBA. He went to 5 conference finals, 3 more than Jokic, and went to 2 NBA finals, double that of Jokic. Consider the fact that in that stretch, Kareem, for the record, was age 31 in 1978, which was early in his time with the Lakers. So the majority of that was when he was playing with the Milwaukee Bucks, who, God bless them, those rosters were not near what he had around him with the Lakers once they got Magic and eventually got Worthy. And Kareem wasn't still prime Kareem. He was still great. He was still a top 10 player, no questions asked. And so it kind of goes to this conversation about why is Jokic not taking the criticism today that other best players in the world have had. A lot of them are on this list. Shaq at one point was the best player in the world. So was Kareem for long stretches. Russell, Wilt, you can battle between the two. Who was? Hakeem was when Jordan was out of the NBA. LeBron was the best player in the world for years. Jordan. We crushed those guys. Or have at least previously, have historically. When they've lost series they should have won. Folks, we still haven't stopped talking about LeBron James against the Mavs in 2011. Back before Jordan was winning championships, it was the whole thing. We actually talked about it on Wednesday on Carving Up the Context. Yeah, Jordan's great, but a little too heliocentric. Best scorer in the league, can't win championships, and he just can't get past those bad boy Pistons. Yeah, there is kryptonite. He can't get past the Pistons. Not big enough, not strong enough. That's what they were saying about Michael Jordan back in the late 80s, early 90s. LeBron James, he could. 2011 against Dallas was a disaster, no question about it. LeBron James, I remember distinctly, 2017, this man averages a triple-double against the 2017 Warriors, who, for context, went 16-1 in the playoffs. They were pretty good. Bron averaged a 30-point triple-double on those guys, and people crushed him after that. Well, because you lost. Bron took a garbage Cavs team the very next year, 2018, to the finals, had a 51-8-8 game in game one, averaged 30 for the series, almost a near 30-point triple-double, crushed. Why? Got swept. Well, the team for the Warriors was way better. Doesn't matter. You're the best player in the world. Heavy's the head that wears a crown. You got swept in the finals. Jokic gets knocked out in 6 in the first round against a team that's missing 3 double-digit scorers, which, as they pointed out on the broadcast on ESPN, no one had ever won a playoff game, much less a series, missing those type of guys. And forget Ant going down in game 4. Ant was healthy before that. Ant wasn't playing good basketball before that. I mean, you're having guys, and again, credit to Terrence Shannon for stepping up, the young guard doing his thing, Jaden McDaniels, who we'll get to in a second. But this is a disaster. Heavy as the head that wears the crown. And since Jokic was dubbed the best player in the world, a second-round exit in which you blew a 20-point lead at home in Game 7, a second-round exit the next year when at one point in the series you had a 2-1 lead, and in Game 7 you got annihilated by Oklahoma City. And then this year against a beat-up Timberwolves team, by the way, that called their shot coming into the series. Jaden McDaniels in particular, bouncing 6. It can't happen. If you're the best player in the world, that can't happen. And Jokic talked about some of the future questions that the Nuggets will have to face after the game.
Where do you feel like this team is, in that bigger picture, and how far away or not far away do you feel like you guys are from being, a championship contender?
I mean, we just lost in the first round, so I think we are far away.
Do you feel like changes, or like what type of change?
I mean, that's not from my decision, to be honest. Definitely, if we're in Serbia, we will all get fired.
I mean, listen, and he's a fascinating interview because he is, kind of nonchalant, whatever. And I think that's a big reason why he's not catching the flack today. That people like LeBron or Jordan or Steph, even guys who haven't worn the best player in the world crown, Kawhi, KD, heck, Westbrook in his prime. I mean, Westbrook, was getting knocked out of the first round post KD. People like me were hard on him. Like that's part of being a great player is if you don't play up to your standard and your team exits early in the playoffs, you got to wear some of it. Get the credit when things are going well, get the blame when they're not. And I think a lot of the reason Jokic doesn't take that same brunt because he's understated, quiet, not a big personality, isn't like, pumping his chest. Like, I mean, Tim Duncan, who one could argue at one point had the title for best player in the world at certain stages of his career. Tim Duncan had some stretches that from 07 to 2013. Spurs didn't make, or rather from 08 to 2012, didn't make a single finals in that run. Didn't make very many conference finals in that run. But Tim Duncan was understated, the big fundamental, not a flashy player. Same thing can be said about Jokic. And again, none of this takes away from his individual greatness. None of it. He's an all-time legend already. But once we start to enter, once you open the door of, hey, is he the greatest center ever? Is he the greatest offensive player ever? The analytics folks plus Stan Van Gundy, hey, by the numbers, he's technically the greatest player ever. Well, then let's hold him to that standard. And today, crickets. Absolute crickets. let's be consistent on all this. Jokic is still great. Jokic is no worse. I think he's going to exit this playoffs no worse than the third best player in the world. But he cannot hold the title for the best. And that's where we're at. On Minnesota, and it feels kind of unfair to the Timberwolves that I just dedicated 18 minutes to Jokic, and for the T-Wolves, like, a fraction of that. But for Minnesota, man, and I go back to what I said after Game 4, especially after Ayo Dosunmu went crazy, 43 points off the bench. And by the way, again, he didn't play last night. I don't have like a vested interest in the Timberwolves being good. I genuinely feel bad for them, that team, in particular, the fan base. Now, there's an optimistic factor of, hey, we could make the conference finals next year, maybe go further. But listen, 2024, made the conference finals, ran to Dallas, kind of ran out of gas, lost a lot of close games to Luka and Kyrie. Last year, shocked a lot of people by getting to the conference finals as a 6 seed, but they were in OKC's league, and that was a very quick series. This year, 6 seed again, it's like no one believes in us. We're on our way to going up 3-1 in Denver, and in that game, our 2 guard goes down with an injury, goes down with Achilles a minute in the game, and then our best player, one of the faces of the NBA, goes down with a hyperextending knee in the middle of the game. We'll see how long he's out. Like, injuries have kind of wrecked them. Now, I'll be honest. They said they were saying in the broadcast, like, Ant Edwards is a very quick healer, which most young athletes are. So that's good news for him and for the Timberwolves. But given that he already had an injury issue coming into the series, if he can somehow come back because they said it's a multi-week injury, if he can come back by Game 4 at the earliest, Game 5, I guess is probably more realistic against the Spurs, I'll give the Timberwolves a puncher's chance because, again, I feel like I'm the only person that brings this up. They have made back-to-back conference finals, and they did it last year as a 6 seed. Now, I think part of the reason they did that is because they played a Warriors team without Steph Curry, but they got there. And so it's kind of a bummer. It's like, gosh, this team kind of, they're a giant killer. They've beaten, in the last few years, they've beaten Jokic twice. They've beaten Luka and LeBron. They've beaten KD. Like, they're not scared of the moment. So it would have been fun. Hey, they haven't been in the finals yet, but they're battle-tested in the playoffs. This group has been together. They understand the moment. To see this team go against the Spurs, who we all generally agree is better. They're my pick to win the championship, but they haven't faced a team like Minnesota, who, again, is battle-tested, who's been there and done that. It'd make for a very intriguing series. I mean, you could argue there'd be hey, maybe this is a battle for best, or not necessarily best player in the world, but face of the NBA. Is it Wemby? Is it Ant Edwards? And so the fact that at the very least for the first, 3, probably 4 games at the least of the series that Ant isn't going to be available, it sucks. And DiVincenzo's out. We don't know what Dosunmu's health is, but you do give a lot of credit. Chris Finch has proven himself to be an excellent head coach of the NBA, and the depth of this team, and Jaden McDaniels. We cannot finish this segment and not mention Jaden McDaniels. This guy, after Game 2, they win. Remember, the Timberwolves win Game 2 in Denver, tie it up 1-1. And Jaden McDaniels, in the locker room to the media, calls out the whole Nuggets roster. He's like, yeah, they're all bad defenders. Jokic's a bad defender. Murray's a bad defender. Gordon, they're all bad defenders. And in Game 6, with his team as decimated as you can imagine from injuries, I would argue a healthy majority, not the overwhelming majority, but a healthy majority of the basketball public's like, yeah, Minnesota's scrappy, but too many injuries. Denver's maybe been playing with their food a little bit. Like, Denver's going to come back from 3-1. Game 6 will be tough. They're favored to win the game, though. And Jaden McDaniels, after talking all that smack, did this. 32 points, 10 rebounds, 13-25 for the field, 1 for 4 from three-point range, 5 of 6 from the line, and he was asked after the game about his talk throughout this series.
Jaden, you talk the talk and walk the walk in this series. What are we witnessing about your journey?
I just want to compete. Ain't no reason to talk no more. Just come out and compete and get ready for next round.
Hey, listen, he's playing it PC after the game, but this is what we love about sports. This is what we love about competition. If you're going to call your shot, if you're going to say, hey, we got these guys, and you back it up, tip of the cap to you. So, scrappy player, best offensive game of his career high, by the way, 32 points. He's never scored that many in a game. Nothing but credit to the Minnesota Timberwolves for there's no other way to say it. I think this gets overused by fans at times. It applies here. They just wanted it more than Denver. They wanted it more. Denver, with the injuries to Minnesota, had the far better team. Minnesota wanted it more. And by the way, Minnesota's coach, Chris Finch, outcoached Denver's coach, Adelman. So that applies as well. Okay. Speaking of shocking, embarrassing, stunning, whatever adjective you want to use, I think it is safe to say, and I'm 22 years old, I'm going to be 23 in a month and a half. So I'm still a whippersnapper in the grand scheme of life. But I don't think I or any person, if you're 80 years old, if you're 8 years old, have ever seen anything on a pro basketball court quite like what we saw at the State Farm Arena last night between the New York Knicks and the Atlanta Hawks. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the New York Knicks did the following last night to the Atlanta Hawks. After quarter number 1, they led 40-15. At halftime, they led 83-36. And at one point in the game, they led by as many as 61 points. They ended up winning the game, by the way, by 51. 140-89 was the final score. And somehow I feel like that final score is kind of covering for the Hawks a little bit because it was a much bigger blowout than that. No team has ever led by that many points at halftime, 47. No game in NBA playoff history have we ever seen where one team got to 100 points before the other team got to 50 points. That's never happened before. The Knicks did it last night to the Atlanta Hawks in a closeout game. Right? The Knicks went in clearly with the mindset, hey, let's wrap the series up. We don't want it to go to a game 7, even if it'd be at home. Let's wrap it up now. You have to imagine if you're Atlanta, hey, again, as we've talked about, they've been one of the hottest teams in the NBA down the stretch of the season. Got a game 6 at home. We've won a game 3 at home. We can do this. At the very least, man, put up a fight. Hold the line, something. I mean, what did the Knicks go on? Like I think it was like a 60-15 run or something. What are we doing? And so, listen, for Atlanta, it's just honest to God, there's no words for it. Like, how do you lose by 51? And again, for those that are curious, that is tied for the 6th biggest blowout in NBA playoff history, the Knicks beating the Hawks by 51 points. For those that are curious, we've got a two-way tie at the top. I'm looking at this now. The Nuggets beat the Pelicans by 58 points in 2009. And we're going to have to go way back in the day. The Minneapolis Lakers beat the St. Louis Hawks. Yikes, Hawks. By 58 points in 1956. That's, again, biggest blowouts in NBA playoff history. And so just there's nothing that I can say that can add to the how the what did that happen to you guys. For the Knicks, though, you guys know a couple of things I've been consistent with on this team. One goes back multiple years, multiple postseasons, is that I don't know if this has been trademarked yet. I highly doubt it. But actually, I don't doubt. I know I'm not the first guy to say this. I think I'm the first one to make it a theme of their show. But Knicks in 6, that's been the theme of Carving Up Live. 2 years ago, first round, they're playing Philadelphia. I said Knicks in 6. That's what they did. They closed out game 6 in Philadelphia. Last year, they got a series against Detroit, and people were thinking, oh, this will be a quick one. I said, no, Detroit's frisky. They can push them a little bit. Jalen Brunson hits a game winner in game 6 to beat the Pistons in 6 games. And then tonight, or last night, folks are thinking, the Hawks are probably going to push it to game 7. They've been scrappy in this series. Knicks in 6, and they do so by one of the biggest blowouts in the history of the NBA playoffs. And why did they do that? Because that goes partly to my second point that I've said about this team this season. They're going to win the Eastern Conference. They just are. Barring injuries, knock on wood, hopefully there's no injuries, that team's winning the Eastern Conference. Before we even look at the Knicks, just look at the competitors. Boston, who we'll get to after the break, they might blow a 3-1 lead to Philly. If they play Philly, if the Knicks play Philly, the Knicks will play either the Celtics or the Sixers. If Philadelphia advances, we don't know about Embiid's health. We also know Embiid in the second round has kind of struggled. Maxi's great, but there is some inexperience on this Sixers team, and we're not that far removed from them getting just blown off the floor in both games 1 and 4 against the Celtics. So I think New York would win that series. They've already beaten the Sixers in a playoff series, albeit 2 years ago. So Boston, over-reliant on the 3, will get to the Celtics later. And then you look at the other side of the bracket, it's like, okay, Detroit, even if they win, they'll have had to come back from a 3-1 deficit as a 1 seed. That's not ideal. And they wouldn't play the Knicks until the conference finals. Who do you trust other than Cade? And we saw it in game 5, by the way. Who do we trust other than Cade Cunningham to get their own shot? Same thing kind of applies to Orlando. Like, Franz Wagner's out. How long is he going to be out? The Magic are an unbelievable defensive team. Offensively, a lot of limitations outside of Banchero and Bane. And then Cleveland, you're waiting for the James Harden playoff disaster, be it games 5, 6, or 7. And Toronto's not getting there. I'm pretty confident the Raptors aren't making the conference finals. The Knicks are the favorite to me, clearly to win the East. And a big reason for that is not just Brunson or Cat, but OG Anunoby. By the way, OG Anunoby, who was, shouted out by the great Anne Hathaway, who, by the way, Anne Hathaway visited the Millennium Falcon when I worked there. I didn't get a chance to see Anne Hathaway and her family. Some of my coworkers did. Shout out to her. Devil Wears Prada, too. She's one of the greatest actors of her generation. Anne Hathaway, who's a big OG Anunoby fan, was talking about how great he is, whatever. And how does OG Anunoby respond? Balls out. 29 points, 7 rebounds, 4 steals, ladies and gentlemen. And then ridiculously efficient. 11 of 14 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3. And then he was 3 of 5 from the charity stripe. So OG was great on both ends of the floor. And I think that goes to something that makes this Knicks team really, really dangerous. We talk about their scoring pieces. We talk about Brunson, who can score. We've seen it hit big shots in the playoffs. Cat, who, by the way, Cat in this series was the definition of efficiency. 18, 11, and 6 on 56 from the field, 44 from 3, 92% from the line. The old 50, 40, 90 shooting splits, which is always good. I think the Knicks need to get him more shots. He only took 4 shots last night. But beside those two guys, OG can score. Mikal Bridges, who had a brutal series offensively, throughout if you look at the Eastern Conference, as far as like guys we expect to contribute on the offensive end, it's Mikal Bridges and Derek White were kind of the two big disappointments. Well, we'll see what happens with Derek White. Mikal Bridges broke out of his slump. We should have made a graphic for him, but he had 24 points on 10 of 12 shooting. And I think Legler might have mentioned this during the broadcast last night in Atlanta, like, oh, shoot. If you're Philly or Boston or really anybody in the East that could take on the Knicks, it's, oh, wow, Bridges was kind of in a slump. He's probably out of it. He scored 24 points, only missed 2 shots last night. Like, he's back. You've got Josh Hart, who's kind of your glue guy, hustle guy. And I think a lot of this, I know Mike Brown, the head coach of a team, is in a position to where he can only, unless they win the championship, nothing to gain, everything to lose because of the expectations. I get that to a degree, but never forget what Mike Brown's pedigree is in. He's a defensive coach. The Knicks have been great defensively. The biggest reason why they would falter offensively with Tibbs, who is a defensive coach, is because Tibbs played his guys too darn long. I mean, that was always the knock is, these guys, they're human beings. They run out of gas eventually. Over the course of an NBA playoffs, like, use your bench, like, utilize these guys. Mike Brown was taking some slack. If you remember going back to game 2, like, why aren't you playing Brunson more? Because he wants Brunson to be fresh for late in the series and moving forward. So I think Mike Brown's coached a really good playoffs thus far with the Knicks. I think their depth is not great relative to other Eastern Conference teams, but their length is excellent. They're a great defensive team. They're smart on offense. Anybody can go for 30 any given night. The only thing I would like to see change drastically for this team moving forward is Cat getting more shots. Like, I think, again, he had multiple triple doubles in the series. He was ridiculously efficient. Didn't get that many attempts. Some of that's on the point guard, Jalen Brunson. But I'm telling you, this team is, it's easy to say because they're the only team thus far in the East that's advanced to the second round to this point. I think they're winning the East. I've said it before the season. They went through some ups and downs. I think there's an element where they actually match up okay with San Antonio, which is who I think they'll play in the finals. I'm telling you, Knicks in 6. I don't know if I feel that way in the next round when they play the Celtics or the Sixers. I probably will. But Knicks in 6 lives on. So New York advances to the second round. All right, we're going to take a 1-minute break. But when we come back, staying out east, we're going to talk about the Boston Celtics and a disastrous Game 6 loss. They're on the brink. They could lose Game 7, go out in round 1. Talk about that as well as the Lakers and the Rockets. Could the Los Angeles Lakers, ladies and gentlemen, be the first team in NBA history to blow a 3-0 lead in a 7-game series? I'll tell you yes or no after the break. And also we'll get to what Draymond Green said about Steve Kerr. All of that coming up in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. I appreciate everybody for stopping by on a Friday. Before we get to our next topic, as we do all the time in the show, be sure to see, I lose it every time. Here it is. I've been losing the QR code as of late. Check out our Carving It Up merchandise. Scan the QR code, top left corner of your screen to check out all of our merch. We got hats. We got t-shirts. It's first day of May, by the way. First day of May, the weather's getting warmer, and so definitely check out some of our spring wear on the website. Scan the QR code. You can also check out our merch for our other amazing content creators on the Grit Network. Barry Grant Jr. with the All Even Podcast, Alfred Parslow Jr. with the Metropolitan Report. You got the Cowboys Camp Fam, Mike and Josh. We got some great content creators, great merch that they put on the website. We've also got some just regular Grid Network merch that just say GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network. So we'd appreciate if you check that out on our website. Now, to the Boston Celtics. I don't think any of us thought we would find ourselves in this position where Boston is facing elimination in round 1 against the Philadelphia 76ers, which they are, courtesy of a 106-93 loss to Philadelphia. So quickly on Philadelphia, and then we'll get to Boston. I said it on Wednesday that Tyrese Maxey is flirting with superstar status. If the Sixers win this series, I think we kind of have to put him there. I'm dead serious. Like, this is a guy who it's kind of been quietly this year because our focus all the time with Philadelphia the last half decade plus has been an Embiid. He's been an MVP in the league. Can he at least get to a conference finals and maybe further? Sixers haven't won a championship in 4 decades. Can he be the guy that gets them there? And all the while Embiid's been in and out of the lineup with injuries and Philly had a rough season a year ago, Maxey, it feels like every night he gets his 30. Like he always gets his 30. And last night, sure enough, Tyrese Maxey, 30 points on 11 of 22, shooting 3 of 5 from three-point range. He's just an elite scorer. He really is. And so credit to Maxey. Folks have made the argument that Maxey's better than Jalen Brunson. He's certainly been playing better than Brunson this season. I tend to, maybe I'll be wrong, I'm picking the Knicks to win the East, and a big reason for that is not only is Brunson, he's certainly more of a volume shooter and scorer than Maxey, but I do trust him. Not that Maxey isn't clutch, because he is. I trust Brunson to hit some big shots in the big moments. He's done it over the course of his career with the Knicks in the playoffs, last year's clutch player of the year. So I still today would take Brunson over Tyrese Maxey. I could feel differently about that in 2 weeks, potentially. So we'll see how it plays out. For the Celtics, it's just the same thing that keeps biting this team in the butt over the course of the last few years of the playoffs. And I understand they won the championship in 24. I get it. But today's plan won't necessarily work tomorrow and vice versa. And when you're a Celtics team that, again, on paper and even just watching the games, they're immensely talented. Tatum, Brown, Peyton Pritchard, Kata's had a nice year. They've got some nice role players. I've always been, he's a terrible defensive player, but off the bench, I like Vucevic and all of these guys, they fit together. I've said all year long, as much success as they had, they're still not as talented as the team from the last 2 years, but they're still good. They're just almost stubborn insistence on shooting the three-pointer, whether it's working or not, is kind of maddening to watch, and it's correlated directly how they shot the basketball from 3. It's correlated directly in wins and losses. We can show you the graphic. Game 1, they didn't shoot that well from 3, 36%, but they won. They shot horribly, 26% on 50 attempts, lost game 2. The first 2 games in Philadelphia, they shoot 43% on 47 attempts, and then 45% on 53 attempts, which is unbelievable. They win both of those. Game 4 in dominant fashion. Game 5, they go completely cold in the fourth quarter, scoring 11 points, 28% on 39 attempts from 3. And then last night, 41 attempts, shot 29% from 3. And again, by the way, you see the total for the series, they've shot 35%. If you look at last night, I think they shot, of their 41 threes, 34 of them came in the last 3 quarters. And this is after, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to double check this. They had a lead 23-20 after the first quarter. And then they said, you know what we should do? Jack a million threes. It's been working for us great in the last 5 quarters. And they go completely cold and they lose the basketball game. And so it's a very, very weird situation for the Celtics to be in, because on one hand, it's okay. We didn't expect this team to go like Celtics fans coming in this year were like, yeah, we'll probably win a round, but we'll lose to the Knicks or Cleveland or Orlando or somebody. And then we'll be back healthy and ready to go next year. But then the success of this team, Jaylen Brown being an MVP candidate, Tatum coming back and looking really good, tweaked his calf last night. Looks like he's going to be fine. Calf injuries scare me, especially for somebody that is 11 months removed from an Achilles surgery. All the best to Tatum. Hopefully he'll be healthy and ready to go in game 7 and maybe moving forward. But the expectations shifted over the course of the season. Like, holy crap, we can maybe win the East and win the championship. And because of the shift in expectations, now we view it as, oh my gosh, this will be a disaster. Not only blowing a 3-1 lead, but doing so in round 1 to a team that didn't have their best player for the first 3 games of the series. Like, this would be an utter collapse by the Boston Celtics. Now, again, game 7 is tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern. Boston's a 7.5-point favorite. That feels about right. Philadelphia, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Philadelphia, that's right. Philadelphia's never won a game 7 with Embiid. I've always knocked them. Like, the furthest they've ever gotten with Embiid is a game 7 in the second round. So they've never won a game 7 with Embiid. Again, I could be wrong, but I don't think they've ever faced a game 7 in the first round. So this would be territory that the Sixers haven't done terribly well in. But for Philadelphia, it's kind of, what do we have to lose? Like, no one thought we were a contender, a serious contender in the East coming into the season. At least I don't remember that being a discussion. And B, we're down 3-1. Embiid had, an appendectomy prior to the series. He comes back in game 4, struggles. Has a gutty performance in game 5, pretty good last night. And holy crap, if we win a basketball game in Boston, we're going to round 2 to play the Knicks. Like, this feels like we're kind of playing with house money. Whereas with the Celtics, you come into the season with a house money type of feel, and now it's a train wreck. And by the way, it would also signify, which I think is why they'd have to make changes. I think they should make changes regardless to their offensive strategy. But they will have gone backwards since winning the championship. Now it's hard to, you can't go forwards. That's the best you can do is win the championship. You try to maintain it or stay in that same, area of contention. But the Celtics basically rolled to a title in 2024. I think they lost 3 playoff games the whole run. Last year, if I remember correctly, because I wasn't a believer in Cleveland, they were the, not overwhelming, but the heavy favorites to come out of the East again. They were the defending champions. They were certainly overwhelming favorites to beat the Knicks last year, who they swept in the regular season. And then they blow 2 games at home and they lose in 6, and Tatum blows his Achilles. And it's a disaster. If that then is followed up by, and then we blew a 3-1 lead in the first round to a team that we've owned, that's the other part of it, is that in the Tatum Brown era, they've owned Philadelphia. 2018 second round, gentlemen swept them. 2020 first round, swept them. 2023 second round, beat them in 7 games. They were down 3-2, came back. Tatum had the 51-point game 7. Like, they've owned Philadelphia over the course of the last, little less than a decade. And so if that culminates in, oh yeah, and we lose to this team despite them not having their best player for basically half the series, that would, I'm not saying anybody should get fired. Brad Stevens, Joe Mazzulla, those guys keep their jobs. And I think the young talent in Boston, Pritchard continues to get better. We know who Brown and Tatum are. And Tatum, we expect him to be better next season with the full offseason, not dedicated to rehab. But there also is sort of the mindset of, okay, we've been really reliant on the 3-point ball. It worked for us in 24. A lot of that was just because our roster was just way, way, way better than the other teams we faced. Like, if you remember, they played the Heat without Jimmy, the Cavs without Donovan Mitchell for the last 2 games of that series, and then the Pacers without Halliburton for the last, I think, 3 games or 2.5 games of that series, and then a Dallas team that was just in over their skis. And then a year ago, they shoot, I remember distinctly because it was exactly 25% on 100% attempts, 25 of 100 from 3 in their first 2 playoff games at home to the Knicks, lose both games, and they're in the hole and they can't come out of it. If now this year, 3-1 lead, game 5 at home, you're massive favorites. If that turns into, yeah, we blew the series and we're going home a couple days into May, man, that's a mess if you're a Celtics fan. Now, I don't think they're going to blow it. I'm picking the Celtics to win game 7 in large part because, God bless them, I just don't trust Embiid in these spots, a lot of that being physically. And I think Tatum and Brown are like, yeah, we're not letting this happen on our home floor. And so I think Boston wins in 7, but then they play a rested Knicks team who has a ton of confidence from the last series, especially from game 6, understandably so, and also from, hey, we beat you guys a year ago, 2 of those games being in Boston. When you guys, and this is why I've never understood the idea of the Celtics being a better team than the Knicks. I get they were higher in the standings and won the season series, but the playoffs are a different animal. And my mindset is, okay, the Knicks have a better coach than they had a year ago. The Knicks are just as good, if not better, defensively than they were a year ago. And if you're Boston, how much are you going to get of Jason Tatum when he was healthy prior to the end of game 4 last year? This Celtics team was far better, I thought, a year ago than they were now. I know folks are trying to make it out, oh, Al Horford was old and Kristaps Porzingis was beat up. Okay, well, you still had Drew Holiday. Like, you still had guys from that championship team with championship pedigree who were ready to play 7-game series in the playoffs, and you still lost. You still blew big leads in the first 2 games of that series, and you couldn't come out of it. So I think the Knicks, regardless of who wins the series tomorrow night, should feel just peachy about, okay, we beat Philadelphia 2 years ago in the first round, and we have a better team now than we had in 2024, and we beat the Celtics a year ago when they had a better team than they have now, and we're more playoff experience. Like, the Knicks should feel great right now. That's the moral of the last 2 segments. The Knicks should feel absolutely over the moon. Here's who shouldn't feel over the moon and who should feel, I'm not going to go out of my way and say, like, nervous or concerned, but the big discussion in the NBA recently over the last little less than 48 hours. Hold on a minute. Are the Lakers going to blow a 3-0 lead, which, as we all know, has never been done in the history of the NBA? No team has ever blown a 3-1 lead or 3-0 lead. Celtics almost came back from 3-0 against Miami 3 years ago, but then the Heat blew them out in Game 7. Tatum turned his ankle, and so could the Lakers blow a 3 lead to Houston. So Game 6 is tonight. Houston is a 3.5-point favorite at home. We knew as early as yesterday morning, no Kevin Durant, who's been dealing with the bruise on his ankle. He's been present at the game. It's been a big discussion about if KD's played his last game as a Rocket, if there's still any animosity in that locker room after KD's burner tweets got exposed at the All-Star break about him trashing his teammates and Jabari Smith and Şengün. What's the vibes like in that locker room? Well, based on reporting, it sounds like they had like a team meeting, smoothed everything over. Doesn't mean like KD's their best friend, but like they can coexist. We're seeing KD on the bench, like chopping it up with the guys. Listen, we're not in that locker room. We can't attest. What I do know is this, because folks have made it out to be, oh, the Rockets are better without KD. They play different. This reminds me so much of that. Are the Warriors better without KD? Yeah, the Warriors are so much better without the 7-foot guy who averages 30 in a sleep. Way better without him. Of course, it's ridiculous. But what Houston has shown over the last few games is, because you got to remember, they lose the first 2 in LA. Game 3 was an all-time choke job. You're up 6 with the ball at home in the final 30 seconds and you lose the game. Just a disaster. So they should have won Game 3. They blew the Lakers out in Game 4, and then they controlled most of that basketball game in Game 5 in LA. What they've shown in that is, okay, don't let the Lakers get out in transition, and we've won the battle. Because, and that's a little, if not a lot, concerning for the Lakers, because we've knocked their half-court defense. They're obviously a worse defense with Luka, a way better offense with Luka, a way worse defense with Luka, who's might be out for the next round if the Lakers advance. But you look at it and you say, okay, that defense for the Lakers is iffy as is, but so is our offense. So how can we break the tie? Because our half-court defense is unbelievable in terms of our length. Amen Thompson, y'all know I love Amen Thompson. Length, he's a highly intelligent defensive player, very anticipatory. Heck, Reed Shepherd, who no one's calling Tony Allen or something, or Gary Payton. Reed Shepherd just picks the pass from LeBron, strips Braun, and gets a layup at the end of Game 5. Like, holy crap, the worst defender on the team is showing up and committing to the defensive end. That if we don't let the Lakers get out in transition, if we don't let LeBron get the ball off to the races with shooters or with the lob threat like DeAndre Ayton, we're good. Like, we feel like we can win that battle 9 out of 10 times. And so how JJ Redick's going to adjust that, we'll see. I think, listen, there's the part of me, I heard Nick Wright say this the other day, like the first guy, because someone's going to blow a 3-0 lead eventually. It's going to happen eventually at some point. Nick Wright was saying the other day, and we know how Nick feels about LeBron. LeBron James is not going to be the first guy to ever blow a 3-1 lead in the history of the playoffs. And that, I'll be honest, is what I tend to think of, like, it can't happen. There's no way. However, different sport, approaches and strategies are completely different in baseball. But did you ever think that the first baseball team to blow a 3-0 lead would be the New York Yankees with Jeter, and that was A-Rod's first year there, and Mariano Rivera's going to blow a save in Game 4? Like, and it happened. And so on paper, particularly if Luka's out, the Rockets have a better team, even without Kevin Durant. So if they were to get him for a game 7, and if you're Houston, it would be a disaster losing the first round given the expectations for this season. But there's also the element of, well, but we expected to have Van Vliet and Steven Adams at this point. And Lakers fans making the Luka excuse, Rockets fans can say, wait a second. We've had KD for 1 game in the series. Fred Van Vliet hasn't played a dribble all year, and Steven Adams has been out for months. So we don't want to hear it. By the way, a year ago, we took the Warriors 7. And who do we have on the roster? We didn't have Kevin Durant, but we had Van Vliet healthy. We had Steven Adams healthy. We had Jalen Green was kind of a liability, but Jalen Green did have a big game too in that series. And for what it's worth, they had Dylan Brooks. They had none of those guys are here this year. Like, it's basically been Şengün, Jabari Smith, who stepped up to his credit, Amen, and then kind of depends on the night from there. So this would be, listen, I'll say it on the record now. I think the Lakers are going to win a close game tonight. I do. There's not a lot of X's and O's analysis on this. I just cannot see a world, even at age 41, year 23. There's no way on planet Earth that LeBron James is going to let his team blow a 3-0. Like, there's no way it's going to happen. I think he's going to get help from Austin Reeves tonight. He's maybe get some of that rust off. Redick's really got to make adjustments to what Houston's throwing at him defensively in the half court. I think the Lakers are going to win. But if they lose game 6, we go into game 7 Sunday, and there's an outside chance. I think I have no source on this. This is pure guesswork on my part. I think there's an outside chance KD plays in a game 7. And now it's like, holy crap. We go from winning 2 games people didn't think we would, at home, mind you, against Houston. We just steal game 3. We kind of give away game 4. Braun was horrible in that game. We're going to close him at, oh, no, we're not going to close him at game 5. Well, we got him as, oh, shoot. Oh, my God, we're facing a game 7. And we thought we had the series in the books. We fans were ordering Lakers Thunder game 3 and 4 tickets. All right. Holy crap. We're going to go out in round 1. I cannot see a world in which LeBron James lets that happen. There is, when you're on that level of all-time great athlete, this goes for any sport. I remember seeing this different context to a degree. Well, to many degrees. But my favorite game of my favorite athlete of all time, Steph Curry, was game 4 of the 22 finals against Boston. Boston had a way better roster at home, 2-1 lead. And it was like watching that game. Steph's just not going to let the Warriors lose. He's going to do literally whatever he can to make sure they get over the finish line with the 2-2 series. And he did. We've seen athletes just kind of take it upon themselves in that moment. And Braun has always been, I'm going to distribute the basketball. I could see him tonight being kind of, if other guys, if Marcus Smart and Luke Kennard, who's cooled off, we knew he would. I think Austin Reeves will have a good game, but he's going to need more help than Austin Reeves. If the other guys kind of don't have it, I can see Braun saying, look, I'm going to be just straight out of gas by game 1 against OKC. Whatever. Like, if I'm basically throwing game 1 against OKC because I'm going to be exhausted, so be it. We cannot lose this series. So I think the Lakers will win tonight. But if it goes to game 7, you want to talk about the pressure. Y'all know I love LeBron James. But you cannot tell me, and Bron's faced pressure, game 7. He's played 2 game 7s in the finals, 2013 against the Spurs, 2016 against the Warriors, and won them both. Played great in both. Game 6 against Boston, 2012, the iconic Bron, hands on knees meme before the game. We've seen it. More times than not, he's been great in the pressure spots. This is different. Bron had never lost a series in which he had a 2-game lead. If it was 2-0 or 3-1, LeBron James had never lost. No player, no team has lost a series with a 3-game lead, because if you got a 3-game lead, it's 3-0. Bron can say whatever he wants. He could be 41 year. That pressure in game 7, And I'm not saying Braun won't live up to it. I'm saying there's pressure on LeBron James. The last few years, it's felt like a little bit of a house money. Like I can only kind of, but really like post-breaking Kareem's record, it's everything I do from here is gravy. Not in that game 7. Like you have to win that game because the opponent matters too. See, if you're facing, it would be awful if it were OKC or the Spurs. You're playing a Rockets team. We have questions at times about their coach. They haven't had their best player for almost the entirety of the series. They haven't had their point guard all series. They haven't had their best offensive rebounder all series. We're not even sure what the locker room vibes are like. And they run you down from 0-3 and win a road game 7. That would be I don't want to hear the first thing about a Luka Doncic injury excuse. I don't want to hear the first thing about it. You got reinforcements with Reeves coming back for game 5. The Rockets have had nothing but bad injury luck. That you can't let that happen. You cannot let that happen if you're the Lakers. So I'll be honest, I'm a bit conflicted. There's a part of me as a fan and admirer, longtime fan and admirer of LeBron James that doesn't want that to be on his legacy because I'll be frank, it would be for a guy who sees, as I said on Wednesday, the LeBron-Jordan debate as neck and neck with LeBron having a slight advantage. This would be enough for me to say, oh yeah, okay, I can't have the guy who's the author of the worst choke in the history of the NBA be the greatest player of all time. I can't do it. I can't do it. So I'm conflicted on that front. On the other front, I despise the Lakers and their fans are, y'all know, the other 29 franchises in the NBA, y'all know about the elitism. Almost reminds you of Yankees fans a little bit that emanates from Laker Nation. If they do this, if they really blow this, oh my gosh. Monday's going to be a must-watch show. Let's put it that way. It's going to be, you're going to want to tune in for that. We may get guests on from Laker Nation, and it could get really interesting. I don't think it'll happen. My gut tells me the Lakers win tonight. If they lose, oh boy. Oh, that game 7 pressures might be unlike anything Braun's ever faced in his career. And I'm not even kidding when I say that. I don't think we take into account enough blowing the biggest lead in the history of the NBA. We'll see. Before we get out of here, because this has been a fun show, I do want to talk Draymond Green for a second. I also want to talk Steve Kerr. So, listen, y'all know I'm a diehard Warriors fan. And this season, I dubbed the season from hell. It was a year where players, coaches, fans were all kind of in unison, like, yeah, we can win the championship. We were the 3rd best team in the league post-Jimmy trade. We're the best defensive league post-Jimmy trade. And if not for a Steph Curry injury, we get to the Western Conference Finals minimum. We feel like we can take that momentum into this year and do something special. And after a rough start, they got hot, 112-16, Jimmy blows his ACL. And then a week and a half later, Steph's out 2 months with runner's knee. And he comes back, has some good games against the Rockets and the playing game against the Clippers, but doesn't quite look like Steph. So it was the season from hell. And so there's been a lot of decisions that have been and are going to be made in Golden State, most of which the first domino to fall is going to be what's Steve Kerr's status. Is Steve Kerr going to be back coaching this team? And initially, based on what I've been hearing in the Bay Area, based on reading the tea leaves, heck, based on what Draymond Green himself said on his podcast after the Suns play-in loss, it felt like, this is probably it. That this had like a finality to it that I didn't feel great about. Because y'all know I love Steve Kerr, and I think anyone who knows anything about basketball knows how great of a coach Steve Kerr is. Well, now, before we even get to Kerr's future, Steve did an interview with The New Yorker. It's a fascinating piece that he was candid on a number of issues. His career, coaching and playing, politics, like how, how the conflict going on in the Middle East hits home because of what happened to his father, like really fascinating stuff. And there was a portion in that article where he said, I'd do anything for, like, there's things that me and Draymond have gone through together, in a negative sense, that I can't forgive him for, but I'd do anything for him. Like, it's very much we've seen some lows. We've went at each other's heads. There's numerous occasions and numerous incidents of that occurring. One being this season. We do anything for each other. Draymond responded to that And folks, I love both of these men, Steve Kerr, Draymond Green. Love them both immensely. Draymond's out his mind. This is what he said on his podcast.
As much as he's done for me in basketball, a part of me think he's hindered me in my career and what I could have become. When KD came from 2016 on, I have not had a play in our playbook. Not a single play that we run for me in our playbook. This is 2016. But if you're going to take one gripe and not be able to move past it for all the other things, then you're shallow as a person. That says more about you as a person than it does about Steve or whoever else in that instant. You got to take the good with the bad, man.
So he's saying, like, there's a part of him that feels like, man, I feel like I could have been more of an offensive, or not an offensive, but more of a scoring focal point in the Golden State Warriors. But we've won championships. I'll look past that because of my love, admiration, respect for Steve. And he's basically saying, if you can't move past that, you're an immature person, which I think there's a lot of truth in that. And the few people that have defended Draymond, or at least played devil's advocate in this instance, have said, hey, greatest game of Draymond Green's career was maybe the biggest game he's ever played. And he's played a lot of big ones, but Game 7 of the 2016 finals, show what Draymond did. Like, I feel like we forget this. Like, that looks like I'm not kidding. This looks like a LeBron stat line. Draymond Green, Game 7 of the 2016 finals. 32 points, 15 rebounds, 9 assists, added a couple steals. Shot 11 of 15 from the field, 6 of 8 from three-point range, hit all 4 of his free throws. Like, Draymond was by a mile the best warrior in the court. We know it's how Steph struggled. Clay never had it going. Draymond was the best warrior in the floor. But I was talking to my man, John Rivera. If John's watching, shout out to him. Dear friend of mine. He made a great point yesterday when we were talking about this. Because I mentioned this. I mentioned Game 7 in 2016. And he said, if only one game is what you can hang your hat on, then what Draymond says is probably crazy. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And Draymond mentions, and he's right about this, once we got KD, they never ran any plays for me. And I think, and by the way, I think Draymond has in the past acknowledged, like, yeah, you're going to run plays for Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, for Kevin Durant. Duh. Before you'll do it for me. Yes. But his mindset is before that, I felt like I could have been a little bit more of a piece off, scoring for the Warriors. First 2 years he was coming off the bench. He averaged 2 a game his rookie year, 6 a game his second year. His third year in the league, when he's inserted in the starting lineup under Kerr in Steve's first year, he averaged 11 points on 44% shooting. His best year, offensive year of his career, scoring of his career, 14 points on 49% shooting and 38 from 3. Like, good. Like, those are good offensive numbers. And I love Dre. And folks have said, well, he was a 3-level scorer in college. I'll use an example. From the Charlotte Hornets, Grant Williams. Grant Williams, I watch him a ton in college because he played for my Vols. You see the basketball back there. I love my Tennessee Vols. Grant Williams was like our big man. Like, we used to post up Grant Williams, throw the ball to Grant the post, and he just back down guys and bully them and get layups. In the NBA, he's a perimeter player. Like, your roles change once you get to the league. And especially if you are a Draymond Green and you are 6'7" in shoes, that role's going to change. Now, what's great about Draymond is his intelligence, versatility, length. Draymond's never gotten enough credit. He's very long. That's why he's such a great defender. But offensively, there are a number of roles that you'll have to play that may not necessarily fit your individual skill set, but might be better for the team. And I think it's the reason that Draymond's an undisputed first ballot Hall of Famer. His mental telepathy with Steph is, you saw it at the end of the Clippers game where Steph makes like a hand signal and him and Draymond are just in sync, know exactly what to do. That comes with a decade of experience playing together. And that comes with playing the same system under Kerr together. And so, yeah, I understand Draymond saying like, if only I could have. But I think there's also but would that have been best for the Warriors? And I think the answer to that's no. And so that's that. So I think I love Draymond. I think he's crazy for saying, man, Steve held me back. Like, no, I think Steve actually got the best version out of you that helped the team. And ultimately that's what it is. What's about team success. The second part, and then we'll get out of here. Monty Poole, who does a great job for NBC Sports Bay Area, He came out with a piece saying that, Steve Kerr and the Warriors met earlier this week, and they're going to meet in a few days. So, I guess Monday of next week, about his future. And we knew that Steve was going to meet with Dunleavy, the GM, and with Lacob, the owner. And this is what Monty Poole wrote. He said that Steve Kerr returning to the Warriors is going to depend on a, quote, alignment of several key factors. 4 of the factors are, or I guess the 4 factors mentioned are, increased accountability for Steph Curry and Draymond Green, roster construction and offseason plans, freedom to speak on socio-political issues, flexibility with coaching schemes, and young players. Let's quickly go over one by one. The first one, I'll be honest, increased accountability for Steph Curry, Draymond Green. So the only one I know comes from Kerr directly is freedom to speak on socio-political issues, because as Nick Friedel reported last week, the Warriors aren't crazy about Steve being as open as he is. I personally, especially on the issue of gun violence, because it's touched Steve personally, I have the utmost respect for him for talking about that with the level of candor that he has. He wants more freedom to do that. The other ones, increased accountability for Steph Curry, Draymond Green. I've said this on my show for years. What all of the legendary players, and Steph obviously is one of them, what they all have in common, they want to be coached. Because they want to find any avenue whatsoever for them to be a better player. Greg Popovich used to say all the time, like, part of the reason we had so much success is because Tim Duncan let me coach him. Tim Duncan let me be hard on him. And so the other guy said, man, Tim Duncan, a 2-time MVP, multi-time champion. Man, if Pop can be hard on him, he can be hard on any of us. And it gave Pop a level of credibility that he wouldn't have otherwise had if Duncan was treated differently or wasn't coached as hard. The same with Tom Brady in New England. Now, you can argue it got a little too far with him in Belichick. I think it did. But it did give Bill credit in the franchise. If Tom can take this, then who am I? Tom's the greatest quarterback ever. I should be able to take that same level of critique and criticism. I think it also applies to Steph Curry. And I've said this for years. Like, Steve's a very chill dude at press conferences, more often than not. At press conferences, you see him on silent. He's kind of like stone-faced. Steve's an intense guy. Never forget this man provoked Michael Jordan into punching him. Never forget that this man is the hothead he is. Second year of his career coaching the NBA. The game, you see it behind me. The mural, Steph Curry hitting the shot against OKC from 38 feet out? At halftime of that game, Draymond Green and Steve Kerr were literally about to fight. Literally about to fight. Steve doesn't take any BS. So, and Steve's a hard-nosed coach. We've seen him break clipboards. Like, he's a competitor. That's what he is. And so, with that all being said, and I'm not blaming Monty Poole for this, but Monty Poole phrasing it the way that he did, to me, this is how I read it, where it says increased accountability for Steph Curry, Draymond Green. That to me feels like I don't want to single out Draymond, so I'll include Steph because he's the only other guy from, who's been with Draymond and Kerr the whole dynasty. I think Kerr holds Steph pretty accountable. And by the way, as far as his personal conduct, there's really nothing to knock Steph over. I mean, there's nice, kind of the model citizen. The one time he lost it was 2016, Game 6 of the Finals. He threw his mouthpiece at a fan, and that was bad. Outside of that's it. Steph's model citizen in his personal life, so that to me felt like I don't want to single out Draymond, and I don't think Kerr necessarily wanted to single out Draymond, so included Steph. That's how I read that. Roster construction, off-season plans. So there's a lot of, I don't want to call it backstabbing, but conflicting reports over the years about who makes the personnel decisions in Golden State. Is it or what percentage is Lacob? Is it Dunleavy? How much of a say does Kerr have? Because Kerr has to coach the players. That to me, I think might be the hardest one to break. And finally, flexibility with coaching scheme and young players. Steve has always been a guy. It's why I defended him. And by the way, how does it look now with his management of Jonathan Kuminga? Jonathan Kuminga, as far as a raw talent, was better than probably half the Warriors roster, at least. He didn't fit at all. He didn't play basketball that made the Warriors better. He was ball-centric, dribbled too much, not efficient at all, never developed a three-point shot, wasn't as good defensively as he could have been due to his length and quickness. So Kerr played other guys who weren't as talented, like, Gary Payton, who fit better. I think they can come to a compromise on that. The sociopolitical issues, that could be a hard one. I don't know really where Lacob leans politically. I know most billionaires tend to lean to the conservative side. I don't know where Lacob's at. We know where Kerr leans. I don't know how much of a factor that in a vacuum will be in whether Kerr will be back or not. Roster construction, offseason plans, that might be the toughest one in terms of this being a power struggle between Lacob, who bought the team in, I think, 2010, 2011. Steph Curry's second or third year in the league. Kerr, who took the job in 2014, and Dunleavy, who's been here the least amount of time. He's been the GM since 2023. I would say this. I think there's a better chance now Kerr's back than not. I would still say 60-40 he's not back. That's what my gut tells me. I think there's a chance. The Warriors reportedly are looking at Golden, the head coach at Florida. They're looking at Billy Donovan. I'd really like to have Billy Donovan if Kerr decides to leave. But I said after the play-in loss to Phoenix, among other things, such as roster construction, any chance whatsoever, any chance the Warriors have it competing, Kerr has to be the coach. I love Billy Donovan. Golden might have upside. Most college coach, Donovan's kind of the exception. Most college coaches don't really work in the NBA. We'll see. That feels like more of a transitional move from the Steph Curry era to something in the future. Kerr has to be back. Because if Kerr's back, Draymond's almost certainly back. And if Draymond's back, does he recruit LeBron? Like, there's a lot of dominoes that could fall in favor of the Warriors making one last push in 2027. Kerr being here has to be one of them, because otherwise the rest won't happen. So we'll see. I'm hoping he's back, but y'all know how I feel about Steve Kerr. I think he is one of the 10 greatest coaches in basketball history. I think Gen Z Warriors fans on Twitter who act like just any old Joe could have won 4 championships or more with Steph Curry are crazy. It's not a knock on Steph. Those two have worked in tandem so well for a decade. We'll see. All right, that's all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live. We're going to have a fun episode post-first round on Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, as well as on Facebook, Twitch, and on X, potentially on Instagram as well. Hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. Oh, and happy birthday, Mama. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.